Thank you for joining us to commemorate Holocaust Memorial Day 2023. Holocaust Memorial Day Trust is the charity that helps everyone to learn more about the past, empathise with people today, and take action for a better future. The first patron of Holocaust Memorial Day Trust was Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, whose death has affected us all so profoundly. Today, we honour her support for Holocaust and genocide survivors who made Britain their home, and her commitment to remembering and learning from the Holocaust and other genocides around the world. Since the murder of 6 million Jewish people in the Holocaust, identity-based hostility and attacks have continued around the world. Genocide has taken place again and again, and today we commemorate the genocides in Cambodia, Rwanda, Bosnia and Darfur. 2023 marks the 20th anniversary of the start of the genocide in Darfur.
Wolves are proud to support Holocaust Memorial Day 2023.
I am joining you from St Benedict's Primary in Glasgow.
We're joining you from Merthyr Tydfil Libraries for HMD 2023.
Hello, I'm Kirsty Wark and I'm joining you from London. January the 27th is Holocaust Memorial Day, the International Day of Remembrance for those affected by the Holocaust, Nazi persecution of groups such as Roma, disabled people and gay people, and those affected by the genocides that followed in Cambodia, Rwanda, Bosnia and Darfur. The Holocaust is still part of living history, but only just. It is our privilege to share with you testimony from eyewitnesses to the tragedy that shocked the very foundations of civilization. The theme for Holocaust Memorial Day 2023 is ordinary people. We're all ordinary people who've made the decision to spend time today learning about and commemorating those genocides. It was ordinary people in those places too, living ordinary lives, who were attacked not because of something they'd done, but simply because of who they were, because of their religion, their nationality, the colour of their skin, or the people that they loved. Ordinary people stood by, watching it happen, persuaded by the propaganda fed to them, or afraid to take action to try to help. Some ordinary people went to extraordinary measures to speak out or to try to rescue others. Other ordinary people were the attackers, the guards and soldiers, the politicians, the railway workers transporting people to their deaths.
The Holocaust was the attempt by the Nazis and their collaborators to murder every Jew in Europe. From the time they assumed power in Germany in 1933, the Nazis used propaganda, persecution, and legislation to deny German Jews their human rights and freedoms. They used centuries of anti-Semitism as their foundation. With the outbreak of war in 1939, Germany invaded Poland, subjecting Polish Jews to violence and forced labor. Thousands of Jews were murdered in the first months of the occupation. The Nazis established ghettos, forcing Polish Jews to live in cramped areas with appalling living conditions. And they repeated this approach across Eastern Europe as they occupied other countries. In 1941, the systematic murder of Europe's Jews began. Firing squads swept Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union, murdering all the Jews they found. By the end of 1941, the first extermination camp had been established in Poland, giving the Nazis their method to continue murdering on a giant scale between 1941 and 1945. By the end of the Holocaust, 6 million Jewish men, women, and children had been murdered in ghettos, mass shootings, in concentration camps, and extermination camps. This was an unprecedented era of horror in human history. But people around the world have continued to suffer mass atrocities and genocide from 1945 to today.
Today, we will hear from ordinary people with extraordinary experience of surviving a genocide. Dr. Martin Stern, MBE, survived the Holocaust as a child, and Amuna Adam escaped the genocide in Darfur, Sudan.
Well, my father was a Jew. He was born in Berlin in 1911. His dad, my granddad, owned a large business which manufactured and sold ladies' coats. And they sold them in the fashionable center of Berlin. It was a very successful business. They lived in a beautiful villa in an outlying district of Berlin overlooking a nice lake.
Darfur is a very big land, and the people there, they are very good, and they hosting everyone. All these people, they come and find themselves as they are a family in Sudan, and no discrimination. All of them, they live in harmony. I grew up in Al Jazeera, and I go to primary school, and after that higher secondary school. And I go to Khartoum University, and I study there biology and chemistry education. And also when I graduate from Khartoum, after that I work as a voluntary jobs.
My dad, of course, being born in 1911, was only 3 when the First World War broke out. You see, here was a Jewish family in Berlin. Their oldest son was fighting for the Kaiser and for the fatherland. Well, a fat lot of good it did. Come 1933, the Germans appointed Adolf Hitler as the equivalent of Prime Minister of Germany, and laws started to be passed discriminating against Jewish people.
When I graduate, I go and work in a private place. It's called Comboni. I work with them as a teacher of chemistry. If you have a nice job or you have your skills and you are clever or anything, you can't do anything in your country.
By this time, my dad was no longer a little lad in short trousers. It became impossible for my dad to earn his living as an architect. So my parents fled to the Netherlands. He started making wooden toys in the basement of our block of flats. And when at the age of 3, my mum took me down to see what he was doing, I wanted to play with him. And it took my parents an awful lot of effort and time to explain why I mustn't touch them. He had to sell them to keep us housed and fed.
The government, they can't give me a chance to work as in education of the Sudan. You don't have a job, you can't help yourself.
It was too dangerous for everybody to know that I was the son of a Jew and living in that flat. And then my dad disappeared, and no matter how much I asked, my mum wouldn't tell me where he was.
2023 is the 20th anniversary of the beginning of the genocide in Darfur, a region in West Sudan. Under the cover of a civil war that had broken out in the region, the Sudanese government armed Arab militia groups called the Janjaweed, devils on horseback, to attack black African people in Darfur. These Janjaweed raids have caused a humanitarian catastrophe in Darfur. Thousands of villages have been destroyed, hundreds of thousands of people murdered, and millions forced to flee their homes.
Perpetrators of genocides are ordinary people too, who create or take advantage of circumstances that allow them to abuse their power. Those obeying orders were ordinary people, policemen involved in rounding up victims, secretaries typing the records of genocide, dentists and doctors carrying out selections. Ordinary people became neighbours wielding machetes in Rwanda, school teacher turned concentration camp guards in Bosnia, and ordinary people made decisions to ignore what was going on around them to be bystanders, to allow the genocide to continue.
When I was 5 years old, I was at a little school in Amsterdam. It was 1944. It was Nazi-occupied Amsterdam. 2 young men walked in, and one of them said, "Is Martin Stern here?" And the teacher answered, "No, he hasn't come in today." So I put my hand up. And as these two young men were leading me out of the back of that little hall, I looked around, and I'll never forget the ashen face of the teacher.
My family also, they are suffering because the government targeting our tribe for. If you are four, I have my brothers, they graduate and they didn't give them a chance to work because he is from four tribe. They redundant my dad from his job because he is a four, and we find it's very hard to live, but we suffer a lot. And also the family there back home.
And off these two young men cycled with me on the back of one of their bikes through Amsterdam, talking with me in absolutely perfect, flawless, accent-free Dutch. These two young men were Dutch, they were not German.
Janjaweed, this is like a nomad people in Darfur. They come and kill the people randomly and take their stuff, and everything is valuable. They take all the lands. The war is start in 2003. We decide with our families to make like a group to help these people to prevent themselves from attack of Arabic Janjaweed. But we didn't, because all the Janjaweed, because the government, they supporting them, funding them, and gives them cars, weapons, and everything.
My sister and I ended up in a prison camp in the Netherlands, high barbed wire fence, wooden watchtowers, and I watched the people who were loading the other prisoners in. There were a few railwaymen, a few soldiers. I could see their faces. And the faces are no particular emotions. They were just doing a job. And I think even at the age of 5, I was wondering how such an ordinary looking bunch of men could do that. We were actually taken from there in a passenger train, would you believe it, but then pretty quickly at a station transferred to a cattle truck. And no room to sit. We were wedged standing against each other. Men, women, children, old people, no food, no drink. Towards the end of the journey, I was asking the adults around me why an older man next to me was sleeping with his eyes wide open. I'd never seen a corpse.
When Janjaweed attacks the village, they, as a families, like your grandfather, grandmother, come, your aunties, your niece, all of them sit in one village. And that time, my family in Zalinja and my Jabal Marra, all of them, they move from that area because the Janjaweed, they come and attack them and take their everything or valuable things. After this war started, I lost like 150 persons. All of them buried in one grave. Until now, genocide is continuing in Khartoum, in everywhere in Sudan. In our country, we don't feel safe in Darfur. If you want to go out of your house, you don't know if you come back or you die. Every day we hear about someone killed by the military of Sudan, the government of Umar al-Bashir and Janjaweed.
Eventually, it was announced that children had to board the next train. On the day of our arrival, we were taken from amongst the other children by a Dutch woman prisoner who wanted to look after some children. She decided she could not put us on that train without coming with us to her death. I can remember going with her and my by now 2-year-old baby sister in her arms to the children's dormitory, which was the assembly place. And it was crowded with children, and a man with a clipboard came in, read out names, those children followed. And gradually the dormitory emptied until the 3 of us were left. The train had left. That train went to Auschwitz.
Last time I saw my family is 2009. I not feel safe for my family back home because the government or Janjaweed, they're targeting us from everywhere.
The British government played a leading role in establishing Holocaust Memorial Day as an international day of commemoration in 2000, when 46 governments signed the Stockholm Declaration Holocaust Memorial Day is supported by members of Parliament from all parties, coming together to acknowledge their shared commitment to learn and remember. We're delighted to be joined today by the Right Honourable Michael Gove MP, Secretary of State for Levelling Up, Housing and Communities.
Holocaust Memorial Day gives us all an opportunity to reflect on the greatest crime in human history, the attempt systematically to eliminate the Jewish people. That crime could not have been committed without the active support of so many, and this year's Holocaust Memorial Day gives us an opportunity to reflect on the role of ordinary people. There were ordinary people, people like you and me, who were involved in, complicit in, the crimes of the Holocaust. The American historian Christopher Browning, in his book Ordinary Men, tells the story of those in a reserve police battalion from Hamburg, guys in their 30s and 40s, leading normal lives, who found themselves actively aiding, abetting, and executing the crime of the Holocaust in Eastern Europe. And there were other ordinary people who stood by and said nothing, even as these crimes were carried out. It's a reminder that all of us have a duty and responsibility to challenge racism and to speak out whenever we see prejudice. Because it was also ordinary people in Germany, in Poland, and elsewhere who did what they could to counter the crime of the Holocaust. And it's ordinary people now who are doing so much to ensure that Holocaust Memorial Day is a moment for us all to reflect. We make sure that that greatest crime in history never happens again.
Around the world today, people are still being targeted because of who they are, in conflicts, government-sponsored atrocities, and as part of everyday society in countries all over the globe and right here in the UK. We will now hear from Chief Rabbi of the United Hebrew Congregations of the Commonwealth, Ephraim Mervis.
The perpetrators of the Holocaust were ordinary men and women who chose to engage in acts of extraordinary evil. The bystanders of the Holocaust were not inhuman. Whilst they slept soundly at night, they were not oblivious to the normalization of hatred, the deportations and the murders. They chose to turn a blind eye to acts of great evil. The heroes of the Holocaust were not superhuman. They were men and women who chose to engage in acts of remarkable bravery at the risk of death. The victims of the Holocaust were innocent men, women, and children who were not given a choice, as they were cruelly herded to their deaths for the crime of being Jewish. Our societies stand and fall on the decisions that are taken, not by mad tyrants and dictators, nor by white knights in shining armor, but by ordinary men and women like you and me. Just as the genocides in Bosnia, Cambodia, Darfur, and Rwanda were carried out by ordinary people, so too the United Nations Convention on the Prevention of Genocide was drawn up by ordinary people. Today, the welfare of the Uyghurs in China and the Rohingyas in Myanmar is in the hands of ordinary people, as is the security of millions of people across Ukraine right now. Surely the time has come for ordinary men and women to guarantee that never again means never again.
From all of us at the Holocaust Memorial Day Trust, thank you for joining us for Holocaust Memorial Day 2023. At 4 o'clock on Friday the 27th of January, we will light the darkness as dusk falls. Join people across the country to light candles and place them in the windows of homes, workplaces, schools and universities. These candles will honour the memory of the 6 million Jews murdered in the Holocaust, of other groups persecuted by the Nazis, and the victims of more recent genocides. They will shine a light of solidarity with people today who face hostility because of their identity. So wherever you're joining us from, please be part of this national endeavour to light the darkness.
Thank you all for being part of Holocaust Memorial Day 2023.